Hello and welcome to this video module titled Student Collaboration, Paired Discussion that's designed and produced by Region 11 Education Service Center. In this course, you'll focus on creating opportunities for students to collaborate. You'll learn about the habits of discussion and be able to lead students into a paired talking task. For today's presentation, you'll need your copy of Teach Like a Champion 2.0 by Doug Lemov. This proficiency rubric details how you'll show your learning within the context of a 10-minute mini-lesson. During the mini-lesson, you'll need to lead students into a paired discussion using an in cue and an out cue to switch partners. You must set time limits for how long students will have to talk to each other, and be specific about how you want students to engage in conversation. Now that we know what we're learning, what we'll need, and how we'll show our learning, let's do this. So what's the point of having students discuss anyways? Doesn't this just take away from your teaching and open up possibilities for off-task behavior? Well, ultimately, the purpose of including explicit opportunities for students to have discussion with a partner is to build the ratio of participation. Not only does paired discussion provide extra time for students to process information, in a paired setting, you know that both students will be active in their learning by actively listening and actively speaking. This differs from having all conversation flow through the teacher, where only one of the students is actually sharing information at a time. Remember, the opportunities you provide students communicate about your content may be the only time students ever actually discuss that topic. So we'll want to shape those conversations so that they're productive and they support deeper learning. This module will review how to hold students accountable during these interactions. It's important to note what does and what doesn't count as discussion. Doug Lemov states that a series of comments that occur in the same room that aren't really connected to one another doesn't count as discussion. There needs to be some sort of response to what was just heard. He says a discussion is supposed to be a mutual endeavor by a group of people to develop, refine, or contextualize an idea. One of your roles as a classroom teacher is to help shape healthy discussion habits so students are prepared to have high levels of academic discourse once they move on. Some of the fundamentals that we must teach, model, and encourage are having students speak at an audible level, tracking or watching the speaker, and using others' names when referring to something that he or she just said. We also want them to follow on what was just stated, meaning that they build on or clarify what has just been said. Providing sentence starters facilitates academic discourse by providing a model for discussion. Finally, opening up the learning experience to discussion means that there will undoubtedly be times when the conversation gets off track. Thus, managing the meta means understanding that when things start going a different direction than what's intended, we need to steer our efforts back to the original topic. Teach Like a Champion 2.0 has some great examples of what healthy habits of discussion look like. At this time, please pause the video, navigate to my.teachlikeachampion.com, and watch video clip 43. This shows students having some book talk. As you watch, consider what steps the teacher took to get the discussion to this level. During your mini-lesson, you're going to need to allow pairs of students to have a discussion about a question or questions that you provide. This paired discussion is commonly called Turn and Talk, and Teach Like a Champion 2.0 has some great information for how to implement this technique. Learn about this technique now by reading pages 324 to 331. As you read, consider relating components of Turn and Talk to providing clear and precise directions. So you'll need to give clear, precise directions to get students turning and talking. This means we'll need to include information for how students will pair up. Will they turn to a shoulder partner? Will A's talk with B's? Or will they stand up, hand up, and then pair up? There should be some sort of cue for one student to begin speaking and an out cue for the next person to talk. We'll want to keep the pace and production up by setting precise time limits and being clear about what we should see with the discussion. Are students turning towards each other? Are they going to be asked to write a sentence that combines their ideas? Or should you hear them using sentence stems that you've provided? Crest of the wave means not letting the conversation go on too long and ending it at just the right time before off-task behavior has a chance to take over. Again, there are excellent examples in video clips 44 through 46 at myteachlikeachampion.com. Take a look at these video clips, and as you do, see if you can identify some of the components of turn and talk, as well as evidence for habits of discussion. I'm sure you've noticed by now that the language between turn and talk and clear, precise instructions seem to have overlap, and the reality is there's quite a bit of synergy between the two. In the next few slides, we'll detail the connections between these two modules so that you can achieve the criteria to receive proficient for each module. The middle purple column here contains an example set of directions that lead students into paired discussion. Please note that I've included the extra challenges of checking with the student for understanding and using sentence stems to promote academic discourse, so you may or may not include these aspects within your own mini lesson. As I read these instructions, think about how you'll adjust these for your own mini lesson. When I say dynamic duos, the student with the sharpest pencil will have 1 minute to comment on the quote on the board. I should see partners facing each other before responding. Jose, what are we doing? Nice. Ready? Dynamic duos. Then give them a minute to speak. Ready to switch in 3, 2, 1. Dynamo number 2. Use the sentence starters to build on your partner's comment. You'll have 1.5 minutes. Ready? Switch. If it's still not clear which part relates to which, I've placed 18 arrows in a bracket to try to quote unquote clarify how the components work together. Take a moment to make these connections. When you plan for the second lesson lab, it may help to have this graphic available to make sure you've got all your bases covered. On this slide, we have a few opportunities for paired discussion, and this is to help you bridge the do now to the turn and talk that happens later. Remember, you'll also need to reinforce or rehearse a procedure in this lesson lab, so it's really important to lay out what you need to do and figure out how much time that you're needing to dedicate for each of these things. So, do now, we have a few opportunities. Quick write is a super common do now. This is when a teacher provides a question related to an image. It could be related to a quote or even a short video clip. The students respond to that question in writing, maybe in a journal or just on a scratch piece of paper. And later on, when you have that turn and talk, they could share the responses that they wrote down. Now, if you are sharing a video clip, make sure that you post the URL or a QR code for students to scan, so as they enter class, they could get started immediately and they're not waiting for you to have to start the video. Another opportunity for do now is solving a problem. This could be a math problem. Maybe it's a more fun math problem, an engaging math problem, or it's a real life scenario. And later on, they could share how they solved it and compare methods and get more ideas. Another do now opportunity is writing a controversial statement on the board and then having students pick a side, whether they agree or disagree, and listing the reasons why they feel that way. Later on, when it comes to paired discussion, they could first meet with someone who they agree with, compare reasons, and then they can meet with someone they disagree with and have a short argument with the reasons, and this lends itself really nicely to whole group discussion afterwards. Another opportunity, not the last one, but just another one that we're listing here, is a categorization activity where perhaps you list concepts that you want students to write on individual Post-it notes or index cards or scrap paper, and then they spend time in their do now trying to categorize some of those concepts. Later on, they could compare how they categorize those concepts in a paired discussion and try to come up with labels for each of those groups. So just a few ideas to bridge the do now to the turn and talk that'll occur in the second lesson lab. Congratulations, you've done it. You finished your learning for student collaboration paired discussion. You're on your way to making your class as engaging as possible for every student the second the tardy bell rings. Let's look at the proficiency rubric one more time to see what the look-fors are for this module. To receive proficient status, you will need to lead students into a paired discussion using an in and out cue to switch partners. You'll need to have precise time limits, and you should be able to see students' engagement. For that extra challenge, provide sentence stems that are relevant that promote habits of discussion. Here we have just a few more pointers. The second lesson lab is really meant to capture the very beginning of class where you greet students, direct them to start a do now, and then allow an opportunity for them to share their work on the do now. You do not necessarily need to share the daily lesson objective like you did for the first lesson lab, as realistically, this would occur after the turn and talk activity. However, still start with the TEKS as a reference to contextualize the work, as the do now and the turn and talk should still be related to a state standard. Your instructional coach may ask you what SE you use or student expectation you use to guide the learning tasks, so be ready to share the TEKS the activities are based on. As stated before, in order to practice, you'll want to write down the directions that lead students into the group work. Analyze whether your directions meet the criteria from the modules. Don't be afraid to add personality to your directions, like customizing the trigger words or choosing specific grouping strategies. Finally, end the lesson after both partners share and conclude the task with an out cue, such as 3, 2, 1, eyes on me, or something to that effect. If there's time left in the mini lesson, you can choose to debrief whole group so there's an opportunity to share what was discussed in the turn and talk, but this is optional. Thanks for watching this module titled Student Collaboration Paired Discussion that was designed and produced by the Region 11 Education Service Center. This video referred to content from Teach Like a Champion 2.0 by Doug Lemov. Images were downloaded from 123RF and Pixabay.